A little girl lived alone in an abandoned house after her parents died in a terrible accident. But no one expected what would happen with the arrival of the new owners of the house. The sound of the wind seeped through the cracks of the broken windows, creating an alarming rustle that seemed to spread to every corner of the old house. This wooden structure looked like it had been abandoned for many years, with its worn-out walls and a roof ready to collapse, but it was not empty inside. On the doorstep stood motionless a small figure. Her name was Mariana, a girl of only 8 years old who had learned to live in silence and solitude. Tangled hair fell on her face, while her large, dark eyes stared intently through the broken window at the road leading to the village. It had been 2 years since the accident that changed her life. Her parents, who were working in the field that morning, had left early for the city to sell the last of the harvest. Mariana saw them leave from that very window where she now stood. She still remembered their smiles and their promise to return before dark. But they did not return. A landslide on the road buried their car under tons of stones and mud. The bodies were found a few days later when the storm finally subsided. Since then, no one had set foot on that threshold. Mariana learned to survive on her own. She fetched water from a nearby river, ate the little she grew in a small vegetable garden, and on the coldest nights, she slept wrapped in a blanket that still held the scent of her mother. However, that evening something was different. From time to time, the wind brought with it the distant sound of an engine, but this time the sound did not disappear. It grew louder. The girl squinted. A car. It was an old car, but its presence seemed strange in this forgotten place. Mariana took a step back, hiding in the shadows inside the house. A lump of anxiety formed in her throat. No one came here. No one should come here. Why now? Who were they? The new owners of the house were about to cross the threshold, unaware of what awaited them on the other side. Mariana watched from the shadows, her small body pressed against the farthest wall. She couldn't clearly see the people who had just arrived, but she heard their voices. There were 2 adults and 1 child. "Are you sure this is it?" "Of course. Look at the map," Daniel replied confidently. "The house is old, but with a little work, it will be as good as new." Mariana felt her heart start to beat fast. She didn't want to be discovered, but she couldn't move away from the window. Curiosity was stronger than fear. From her hiding place, she saw the couple approach the main door. A sturdy man held a toolbox in one hand and with the other tried to break the rusty lock. A woman with her hair tied up and a tired expression held the hand of a little boy, about 6 years old, who looked at her with wide eyes. "Mom, it's scary," said the boy, tightening his grip on his mother's fingers. "Don't be silly, Lucas," she replied with a strained smile. "It's just an old house." With a final metallic screech, the lock gave way and the door opened slowly, emitting a long, piercing creak. The door opened, the sound echoing through the house like a moan, and Mariana felt the cold envelop her even more strongly. From her hiding place, she watched as daylight penetrated inside for the first time in many years, illuminating the dust hanging in the air and the old furniture covered in sheets. "Well, here we are," said the man, clapping his hands. "Not as bad as I thought. Couple of weeks and everything will be ready." But as they talked, Mariana could barely breathe. They were inside. For the first time in many years, other people walked on the same floors she had wandered alone. She hid even deeper in the shadows, holding her breath. The wood creaked under the steps of the newcomers, as if the house itself was protesting their presence. "Lucas, don't go far," warned the boy's mother, who had begun to examine the room with curiosity. "And if there are ghosts here?" he asked in a trembling voice. The woman laughed shortly, though a bit forced. "There are no ghosts here, honey. It's mice and cobwebs." From time to time, he looked over his shoulder, as if expecting to see something hiding in the corners. Mariana followed his movements with her gaze, her fingers tightly gripping the edge of her worn-out dress. No one was supposed to see her. No one was supposed to know she was here. However, something happened. The boy, driven by the curiosity inherent in his age, approached a slightly open door at the end of the hallway, a door that Mariana always kept closed. "Lucas, don't go there," shouted the mother, but it was too late. The boy slowly pushed the door and entered. Mariana felt panic overwhelm her. It was her room, her little refuge, where she kept everything that remained of her previous life: an old blanket, a torn doll, and a worn photograph of her parents. "Lucas, come out of there." The father's voice sounded stern, and footsteps quickly sounded, approaching. The boy obeyed and came out, but before closing the door, he turned around and looked into the dark corner where Mariana usually hid. For a moment, their eyes met. It was just an instant, but enough for the girl's heart to stop. Kay said nothing, closed the door behind him, and ran to his parents. "Come." But Mariana knew. He had seen her. Mariana remained motionless. Her heart was beating so fast she could feel it in her ears. She knew that this moment changed everything. Lucas had seen her. What would he do now? Would he tell his parents? Would they all return to her hiding place? Lucas approached his parents with eyes full of excitement and slight fear and tugged at his mother's sleeve. "There's someone there," he exclaimed, pointing to the room at the end of the corridor. The mother looked at him with bewilderment. "What are you talking about, Lucas? There's no one here, honey. It's just an old house." But the insistence in the boy's eyes was enough for the father to frown and take a flashlight from the toolbox. Mariana, hiding in a dark corner, heard the footsteps approaching. She pressed the old doll tightly to her chest. Her small fingers were trembling. The flashlight illuminated every corner of the room, revealing the items Mariana had kept for many years: the old blanket, the torn doll, and the worn photograph in a frame made of broken. The father carefully examined the room, but found no one. Mariana had managed to hide behind the furniture. Her small figure was completely hidden by the shadows. "There's no one here," said the man with a tone that mixed relief and disbelief. Lucas insisted. "I saw her, Dad. There was a girl." The mother sighed, stroking her son's head. "Maybe you imagined it, Lucas. This place is unfamiliar, but there are no ghosts here." Kay, however, doubt had already crept into their minds. But Mariana knew that such an answer would not satisfy them for long. They had seen her traces, felt her presence, and, now that they had entered her refuge, the house was no longer the same for any of them. In the silence, the girl rose from her hiding place, took the photograph she had so carefully kept, and pressed it tightly to her chest. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at the closed door. For the first time in many years, she was not alone. But this thought did not bring comfort. It brought fear. Night fell, and with it, an uneasy silence settled in the house. The new owners lit a few lamps in the main rooms, but the semi-darkness still ruled the corners. Lucas couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. While his parents were unpacking, armed with a flashlight, he decided to return to the hallway. Mariana, in turn, could not sleep. From her, she saw it in his eyes. She pressed the photograph of her parents to her chest and told herself she had to be strong. Lucas carefully pushed the door. This time, no one stopped him. The flashlight illuminated every corner of the room, and his gaze stopped on the torn doll lying on the floor. It was small, old, but clearly loved. He bent down to pick it up, and at that moment, he felt something behind him. "Who are you?" asked the boy, not daring to turn around completely. Mariana said nothing, only made gestures and grimaces that the boy could not understand. Clara and Daniel, noticing that Lucas was not answering their calls, went to look for him. They were surprised when they saw Mariana. Clara took a step forward and froze, seeing Mariana press herself even harder into the corner. "Hello?" she said in a soft, almost whispering voice. Her voice broke the tense silence of the room. "Don't be afraid. We won't hurt you." Daniel, who had been inspecting the house until then, slowly approached and stood next to his wife. "How long has she been here alone?" he muttered, more to himself than to others. Lucas, the little boy, stood behind his mother, watching with curiosity and fear. "Is it a ghost?" he asked quietly, squeezing his mother's hand. "No, Lucas," the woman replied, slowly kneeling down to be at the girl's level. "It's just a girl, like you." Mariana was silent. Her trembling hands tightly pressed the doll to her chest. The woman handed her a blanket, trying not to look threatening. "Here, dear, take it. You don't need to be afraid." After Clara and Daniel found Mariana in the old house, everything changed for them. The fragile and frightened girl sat silently, hugging her torn doll and looking at the strangers with eyes full of distrust. Clara tried to approach her carefully, speaking in a soft voice, but Mariana did not respond. It was obvious that this little girl had lived alone for a very long time, stuck in a routine of survival that no one should have to go through. Daniel, more practical, immediately suggested seeking help. "We can't leave her here," thought Clara, covering the girl with a blanket she had brought from the car without saying another word. Daniel took his phone and contacted the local authorities to report what had happened. The move to the city was a tense moment. Mariana, although clearly tired, did not close her eyes. An instinctual fear, mixed with the little she had left, kept her on alert. When they arrived in the city, a small crowd began to gather around the car. Rumors spread quickly. "Isn't that the girl who lived in the old house?" whispered an elderly woman with disbelief. "Hey." Mariana did not react to the experience, but tightly clutched her doll in her hands. In a small social workers building, Clara and Daniel told what they had found. Serious and pedantic man checked the documents, listening to them. According to the records, Mariana had been declared dead, along with her parents. "This case is special," the social worker said. Clara felt a lump in her throat. How could such a serious mistake have happened? Meanwhile, Mariana remained silent, sitting in a corner of the office, playing with the protruding threads of her doll. Mariana finally attracted the social worker's attention. He made a decision. "First, we will conduct a medical examination, and then she will be transferred to a shelter until ... Clara wanted to object, but Daniel took her hand. He knew they had to follow protocol if they wanted to help Mariana. Clara bent down to Mariana, looked into her eyes, and said, "We will come back to visit you very soon, okay?" she said with a smile, although pain sounded in her voice. Mariana nodded without saying a word, and, with obvious reluctance, let go of Clara's hand. The door closed behind her, leaving Clara and Daniel in the corridor. "We can't leave her here," said Clara with tears in her eyes. "I know," he replied, looking at the closed door, "but we must do everything right." A few days later, social workers received an unexpected application. A woman claimed to be Mariana's aunt, her deceased mother's sister. Her appearance was as sudden as it was puzzling. The family said, the woman said in a firm, authoritarian tone. Clara and Daniel were present at that meeting and could not help but notice the tension in Mariana's body at the sight of this woman. The girl instinctively stepped back, hiding behind Clara. "She doesn't look comfortable with you," Daniel said honestly, and, noticeably embarrassed, tried to force a smile. "It's normal. A lot of time has passed. She just needs to get used to it." Nora, that was the aunt's name. "There's no reason for Mariana to be so afraid of her," Clara whispered one night, looking through documents with Daniel. "I know. Something is wrong here, and we will find out," he replied with determination. The visits to the shelter continued week after week. Clara and Daniel brought toys, books, and new clothes, but most importantly, they brought warmth. Mariana began to trust them more, although her fear of Nora was obvious. "Why doesn't she want to go with you?" Clara asked Nora directly during one of her visits to the shelter. "She's just a traumatized girl. She needs time," Nora replied with a fake smile. But this answer did not convince Clara. The case in court became more and more tense. Nora presented documents showing her as a stable and financially secure person. She even provided evidence that she had begun preparing a room for Mariana in her home. My intentions are pure. I just want to take care of my niece, Nora stated before the judge. On the other hand, Clara and Daniel's lawyer expressed doubts about Nora's true intentions, pointing out that Mariana's fear of her could not be ignored. My client and her husband have demonstrated a sincere commitment to Mariana's well-being. It was obvious. Clara and Daniel were always by her side, while the plaintiff showed no interest until this moment, he argued. The scales seemed to be tipping in Nora's favor. The laws were clear. Blood relation had priority. Clara and Daniel began to lose hope. That's what she was after. Not Mariana, but the money, Daniel said irritably, hitting the table. But how do we prove it? This is not enough to deprive her of custody, Clara replied anxiously. The day of the final court hearing arrived. Clara and Daniel were exhausted, but determined to fight to the end. In the courtroom, the judge listened to the closing statements of both parties. The plaintiff had proven that she was a close relative and had the means to care for Mariana. My duty is to ensure that the child receives stability and care from her biological family, the judge said, addressing Nora. Clara and Daniel felt that everything was lost. Although they had presented evidence of their commitment to caring for Mariana and had uncovered Nora's financial irregularities, this data was not conclusive. The documents showed discrepancies in inheritance records and suspicious financial transactions. But there was no direct evidence linking Nora to the accident in which Mariana's parents died. Moreover, biological kinship still remained a significant factor for the judge. Mariana, sitting next to them, seemed smaller than ever, with her head down and a shabby doll in her hands. The girl's silence throughout the process was an obstacle for Clara and Daniel's case, who knew that her testimony was key, but had never pressured her to speak. However, something unexpected happened. Mariana raised her gaze. Her eyes were full of determination. She stood up and, in a trembling voice, broke the silence she had maintained for months. She did something to my parents' car. Complete silence fell in the hall. The surprised judge asked Mariana to continue. I saw her in the garage. She took something out of the car before they left. The girl's words were slow, but each one sounded like a bomb shattering the silence of the hall. Nora tried to interrupt her, shouting that the girl was confused, but the judge ordered her to be silent. This is extremely serious. We'll begin a new investigation, he declared. The investigation revealed the truth. Nora had indeed staged the accident by tampering with Mariana's parents' car, leading to their death. Her goal was to seize the inheritance, believing that if the entire family died, she would become the sole heir. When confronted with irrefutable evidence, her mask collapsed. She tried to justify herself, claiming it was a mistake, but it was too late. Mariana was declared a ward of the state until her future was decided. However, the judge, moved by the dedication of Clara and Daniel, allowed them to begin the process of immediate adoption. Mariana returned home. The sun of a warm day illuminated the garden of Clara and Daniel's house, where Mariana was flying a kite that Clara had made for her. The wind lifted the light figure of paper and fabric, causing the girls' ringing laughter to spread throughout the neighborhood. Clara and Daniel watched her from the veranda. Their hands were intertwined, and the aroma of freshly washed laundry lingered in the air.